Every time you do a mitzvah, you are becoming sanctified. You are adding holiness to yourself. But that's a sheki deshana of mitzvotav. As the Rabbeinu Bachai says, that a person, um, the holiness to the Jewish community is brought through the mitzvot. That brings you holiness. A Jew who does not keep mitzvot does not have the holiness. He might be Jewish, might come from amazing parents and great-grandparents and descendants of Avraham Avinu. You might be a prince, but you might be a prince that's not doing anything to make yourself holy. So the mitzvahs make you holy. So we understand Asher Kiddushan of a mitzvot. But the Gemara asks on 23a, the Gemara asked, how could you say the bracha mitzivonu that Hashem God has commanded us to light the ner Chanukah when there's that the mitzvah Chanukah story happened post the giving of the Torah, right? The Chanukah story of the miracle with the Greeks and the Jewish community happened during the Second Temple era, about 190 years or so in the Second Temple. So there was already the Torah was given many years before. So how could you say the Sivonu? How could you say, and you commanded us? So the Gemara said, the reason why you could say you commanded us is because the Torah says, don't turn away from what the rabbis tell you. And therefore, the Torah told you to listen to the rabbis. So therefore, in a certain sense, God tells you, the Jewish people, to listen to the rabbis. And the rabbis said that every Jew, every home should have a Chanukah for 8 days. And therefore, that's where the commandment came from Hashem, because God said to listen to the rabbis. That is what the Gemara says. So Mark Ashby, I think yesterday said, or one of the members said, and so it comes out, Rabbi, that every Rabbanan, every rabbinic mitzvah is a biblical mitzvah. You're fulfilling a biblical mitzvah because you're not turning away from what the rabbis told you. And the Torah says, don't turn away from what the rabbis told you. So I said, Mark, you're right. So I want to clarify that point. What I said he's right is according to the Rambam. Because the Rambam says, in the Sefer HaMitzvah Shorish Aleph, based on our Gemara here, anybody who violates a mitzvah that the rabbis instituted. Now, if you fulfill it, you are fulfilling the mitzvah of not turning away. And if you don't follow what the rabbis say, person does not wash his hands. The rabbi said, wash your hands before you have bread, right? Wash your hands until the and a person does not listen to that, is violating a Torah law, even though the idea of washing hands before you light is the rabbinic law. Or the rabbis say, you should light Shabbat candles before Shabbat. So if someone does not light the Shabbat candles, he's violating, or she's violating the rabbinic obligation, which now becomes a violation of the Torah law because the Torah says listen to the rabbis. So that's what the Rambam understood, Maimonides understood. However, Nachmanides, he has one of his questions, he has a question on the Rambam, because we find that, we say Safek de Rabbanan, there's a famous, we say if you have a question in rabbinic law, let's say the rabbi said, you have to go ahead and say a bracha before you eat, right? If you have a doubt, if you said a bracha, if you're not sure if I said a shahakol, so we say that if you're not sure if you said the bracha before you eat, good morning Asaf, we say that Safek brachot lahakal, and you do not say the bracha, if you're not sure if you said a bracha. So if every rabbinic law is a biblical law, we know if it was a biblical question. If I'm not sure, good morning, Adam. If I'm not sure if I said birkat hamazon and I had a good meal, I was satiated. I'm not sure if I said I had bread. I'm not sure if I said birkat hamazon. We say safek deraita. You're strict. If you're not sure if you did the biblical law, you're strict. So why is it by rabbinic law? If I'm not sure if I said I'm lenient. So it would seem that rabbinic law does not have the same status as Torah law. If it's true, when you violate the rabbinic law, you violate Torah law. So why should you be lenient? Now, the answer to that question is that, Adam, we're addressing the question is every time a person violates rabbinic law, is there a violation of biblical law? Because since the Torah gave a generalization, don't turn away from the rabbis tell you, That was one source, and there's another source. Ask your elders, and uh, and ask your father, and he will tell you, and ask your elders, and he will say to you. And so we see that you have to follow the elders. So that should be a source that biblical law you have to follow the rabbis, and if you do not follow the rabbis, you violate biblical law. So therefore it comes out every time a person doesn't follow rabbinic law. In essence, he's violating Torah law, right? That was so the Maimonides is of that opinion. Maimonides, Rambam holds that is true, and but the question is, why are we more lenient with rabbinic law, right? When are we more lenient? Now, of course, we keep rabbinic law. We keep Hanukkah, we keep Purim, we lash our hands. We do keep rabbinic law with very seriousness. There's no question about it. But we find when there's a question, if I have an obligation of rabbinic law or not. If I have a question, if I'm obligated in this rabbinic law, the rabbi say, if you have a question, if you're obligated in our enactments, you're lenient. When you know you're obligated in our enactment, you have to do it. You know you didn't say a bracha on the drink. You have to say a bracha. There's no question. Let's say if I'm not sure if I said a bracha on my drink. I don't know if now the responsibility to say a bracha before you eat is a rabbinic enactment. So if I'm not sure if I said a shahakol, the rabbi say if you're not sure, don't say it. Don't do it. You shouldn't say the bracha. Sometimes if you're not sure, because here the problem is if you do say the bracha and you're not sure, you might be saying Hashem's name and God's name in vain. But even if it would not be a blessing issue, if I'm not sure if I did a rabbinic mitzvah or not, I'm not obligated to do it. When I'm not sure, the rabbis say if you're not sure if you have a rabbinic obligation, you're lenient. So even if I would not be saying a bracha, let's say a Hallel. Let's say I could say I don't remember if I said Hallel on Yom Tov. But let's say it's rabbinic law to say Hallel on Yom Tov, and let's say even if I would not say it with the bracha, if I'm not sure it's a rabbinic law, the rabbi say if rabbinic law you could be lenient. Why should you be lenient? If every rabbinic law is Torah law, you shouldn't be lenient. Just like if I'm not sure if I said Birkat Hamazon, the after bracha when I had a big meal of bread, I don't say suffix, we say suffix d'oraita, a question of biblical obligation. The general rule is if you have a question of a biblical obligation, you restrict. And when you have a question of rabbinic obligation, we're lenient. But if every rabbinic obligation is biblical obligation, why should you be lenient? Therefore, it's a proof that every rabbinic obligation is not a biblical obligation. That's I presume that's Nachmanides' idea. But Maimonides says no. The fact that you're lenient in rabbinic obligation when you're in doubt, because that's what the rabbis themselves tell you to do. That's how he would defend himself. The rabbis tell you when you have a doubt, if you have a rabbinic obligation, we are telling you you do not need to do it. Now, many times you want to go out of your way and do it, you could do it. Sometimes you maybe not be able to do it, because if it involves a blessing, it might be a blessing in vain. But if it's not a blessing in vain, you want to go be strict, you could be strict. But you're not. But they tell you the law is if you have a question of rabbinic obligation, you are exempt. But that's not being. But that's what the rabbis themselves are telling you. So therefore, it's not that really rabbinic law. We really have an obligation because of the Torah tells you follow the rabbis. But the rabbis themselves tell you don't do it. You're not obligated when you have a question. When you have a question of rabbinic law, yes.
How does Rambam explain the different punishments like in Makor?
Right. Yeah, but those punishments are mainly talking about biblical violations. So but here we're talking about how do we view a rabbinic obligation?
Right. Don't we learn from the idea that the rabbinic obligations don't carry the same punishments?
Okay, but that's again. But Maimonides would say that the rabbis did not impose those things. They that's how they set it up. I mean, there might be there's something called rabbinic lashes. However, the rabbis set it up, but it's not. The rabbis were a little bit less strict in their enactments, but that's how they chose to. But not that it's not a biblical responsibility to follow the rabbis. It's a biblical responsibility, but the rabbis have their system, how they wanted their laws to be looked at and viewed and kept and with certain leniencies that they placed into play. Yes.
How do we know the difference between a rabbinical and a biblical beracha?
Oh, very good. Yes, that's right. That's
Let's
why
say
you're learning.
tefillin. What about like putting on tefillin? Is that a rabbinical or a biblical?
Ralph, you asked a great question. The reason how you'll know it is by learning the Gemara, Ralph. That's how we'll know it. How do you think we'll know it? Yes, Ralph. So the Gemara states, the Talmud states, that the rabbis instituted blessings before you fulfill a mitzvah. So therefore, meaning to say, there's a biblical responsibility every day to put on tefillin, except Shabbat, Yom Tov. But there's a rabbinic responsibility to say a blessing before you do that mitzvah. If a person puts on tefillin without a blessing, he did the mitzvah. The biblical mitzvah is putting on the tefillin. The Torah did not give us a mitzvah called say a blessing before you put on your tefillin. The Torah did not say a blessing before you put on your talit. The Torah did not give those blessings that we say before we perform a biblical mitzvah. They were not given, but that's a rabbinic enactment, and most probably the rabbis did it because they want you to put your focus, the intent, and I'm doing this act because the Torah obligated me. It gives you a certain mindset, certain kavanah, certain intent. And that is, good morning. Morning, Mr. Haber. Thank you very much. And that is the rabbinic enactment. So that's the rabbinic enactment of the rabbis. So if a guy went ahead and already did the mitzvah, see, you think by tefillin, if a guy put on tefillin without saying a bracha, the mitzvah is not over. So you can still say a bracha, because the mitzvah is continuous. Every moment you have your tefillin on, you're getting a mitzvah. But let's say it would be a type of mitzvah, let's say covering the blood of a bird, or covering the blood of a wild animal that's kosher, like a deer, right? If you slaughter it, the Torah says it's a mitzvah. Mr. Haber, if you like a coffee, the coffee is waiting for you right next to your chair. So if a person went in and did the mitzvah, the guy went and covered the blood of the bird, and now he said, oh, I forgot to say a blessing on that. It's over. The mitzvah's gone. You finished the mitzvah. There's no need, you can't say a blessing after the mitzvah's finished. But that was a rabbinic law. Before you slaughter an animal, before you cover the blood, let's say there's a bracha. How do you like that,
Wouldn't
Ralph?
it be the same thing if you put on tefillin and you didn't say the beracha and you forgot? And is that over, or you can say it later?
You could say it, and you could say it, and you could say it because the tefillin mitzvah is not over. Because the meaning, in contrast to covering the blood, you cover the blood, it's over. Tefillin, maybe your obligation, meaning, or your minimum obligation is over. But the mitzvah, meaning your minimum obligation is to have the tefillin on for a moment. But the mitzvah, but really the mitzvah is the whole day to wear tefillin. Meaning the Torah gave a mitzvah to wear tefillin the whole day. We're not able to wear tefillin the whole day because it's hard to keep our bodies clean. That's why we don't wear the tefillin. Originally they used to wear the tefillin the whole day. The blacksmith had his tefillin on. The working people had their tefillin on the same way people wear tzitzit the whole day. People had their tefillin. They were wearing their tefillin the whole day.
I just notice in the morning when I'm in shul, some people don't say the beracha and some people do. So I just wonder.
Everyone needs. First, I want to welcome Emmanuel. People are supposed to say the bracha. I don't know if people are not saying the bracha, Ralph, on their tefillin. It's because they're not knowledgeable, or the other thing is it could be they're putting on their second pair of tefillin, meaning they're putting on their Rebbeinu Tam's tefillin. So
I doubt it.
I don't know if that's what's happening by your shul over there.
So. No.
I don't know if that.
It's Orthodox shul, so it's
right. So if they're not saying a bracha, it's because I think they don't. They were not educated. I think you should have a little conversation, Ralph.
I mean, some people do, some people don't.
I think it's a lack of knowledge.
Or they're saying it to themselves, and I don't hear them. It's just.
Right. It could be they're saying it. There might be a mumble jumble that's going on. It might be a low blessing that they people need a little strengthening in saying a proper blessing. They don't, maybe there's some movement of lips. They don't even hear what they're saying. Yes.
So you can put the whole really you have to say button and say that.
Yes, you can say right. I think you have to look up how it says. Maybe it says,
am I obligated to tell them?
Maybe you would say the bracha. We can take out exactly the text, but yes, but the mitzvah is continuous.
Okay, but the ideal is you say it right.
Right, the ideal is you're supposed to say the blessing on the tefillin. Very good. Before, good morning, Josh. Before you tighten the tefillin,
Right.
you
Am I
just-
obligated to tell them?
Yes, you are obligated. You are responsible for them, Ralph. They are your brothers. We all Jews are responsible for each other. Now, there's a way to tell them, and a person like you is a very sweet man. You will not have that problem. You'll be able to say it with a respectful way, privately. And in a nice.
I just noticed one guy wearing his tefillin. It's all backwards, and I said to someone, I said, can't you just show him how to put it on? I don't want to be the one to tell him.
Ralph, if you don't tell him, the man will never know. You know what I'm saying? That's I'm gonna get on Mr. Brewer 1 second. The Chafetz Chaim talks about the importance of placing the tefillin in the properly.
I feel like you sometimes.
Very good. That's a compliment, Ralph. That we are responsible. If you can help a Jew do the mitzvah right, and you have responsibility. You know what I'm saying? So if he's not doing it right, so you should show him or have someone show him. If the tefillin is not placed in the right place, he doesn't get credit. Meaning, let's say the tefillin is. Chafetz Chaim says if the tefillin is too low, it's like it's still in the bag. That's why I have here today. I have a sticker for all the people to have the proper placement of tefillin is. But
I need one of those.
yes, I'm going to give to you. Maybe I'll have
Take a picture.
I'll have Adam take a nice picture and send it to the group. It'll be done in your honor, Ralph, and you can share it with anybody. You can share with anybody you want. You know what I'm saying? So that is the law regarding tefillin b'pratios. So here we have in the Shulchan Aruch talks about tefillin. So he says. All the mitzvot, you're supposed to say, generally you say the bracha before you perform the mitzvah. So therefore he says what Adam was saying, Adam. They say that you have to say the blessing after you put it on your muscle before you tie it. You got to make sure it's on your muscle, right? People make a mistake. People put it too low. General rule is a little above 2 fingers. If it's too low, you don't get credit, right? Mr. Haber, it has to be on the muscle. If it's too low, it's no good. On the muscle. And also has to be above the hairline. I don't know if anybody has noticed Mr. Haber over the years. Mr. Haber is really a role model, but he's always touching. He touches his tefillin on a regular basis to make sure they're in the right spot. You hear that, Mr. Haber? You heard what I said? So it's a beautiful thing. He's making sure that his tefillin doesn't fall down.
But also just to keep reminding himself it's there, even if it isn't.
Right. So the point is also you're supposed to touch the tefillin to know that it's on you. And the Chafetz Chaim writes, Adam, this is in your honor. After the fact, if you did not say the blessing before you tied it, you should say the blessing even afterwards, because the mitzvah is drawn out throughout the whole day.
Are you supposed to say it out loud, or do you say it to yourself? Because I don't hear anybody saying it except for one person.
The bracha on the tefillin could be said out loud. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting, Ralph, that you asked this question. The bracha on the tefillin could be said out loud like any bracha when you say a bracha on your talit. Right? You can say a bracha on your talit out loud and say bracha. Right. The main thing is that at least you need to hear the bracha. And so therefore, you should say that at least out loud that you should hear the bracha. It's interesting, the Ashkenazim, their custom is they make a bracha, say a bracha on the Shel Yad, and they also say a bracha on the Shel Rosh.
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of question, do we need to say a bracha on the Shel Rosh? Let me explain the point a little bit. When you say the bracha on the Shel Yad, when you say the bracha on the hand, you're supposed to have in mind it's for my hand and for your head. Because you're going to be doing the mitzvah of your head, the mitzvah put on your hand and the head. Therefore, before you say the bracha, before you tie, you have a minus for both. It's my hand and my head. And now, if a person would speak between putting it on his hand and his head,
You have to say
he would
another
then you
bracha.
have to say a bracha on the head. So,
All right.
because he interrupted because then he lost the bracha on the shalosh, on the head, because he spoke between the shalosh. He still got the bracha covered the hand because he said the bracha on before he tied the hand, but he lost the bracha on the shalosh on the head if he spoke between the shalosh, the hand, and the
Mitzvah
shalosh.
tefillin.
Therefore, we'd have to make the bracha on, al mitzvah tefillin on the shalosh. In such a case, a person spoke at that time. Ashkenazim feel not only does the bracha on the hand go for the head, they have an additional blessing on the head afterwards. Meaning they put on the shalosh, the head, and they say before they put it in the right spot, before they tie it, they say a bracha on the tefillin. That bracha is controversial. What do I mean controversial? But it's not everybody. It's not agreed upon by everybody that you need to go ahead and say that blessing. Therefore, what do the Ashkenazim do after they say that blessing? They say, after they say the blessing, then they put it in the right spot. Then they say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Veh. They say that. And out of respect for those opinions that say you don't need that bracha, but they hold you do need to say the bracha, that's why they're saying it, but they still show respect for the other opinions. If a person ever said a blessing in vain, what's the law if you said a blessing in vain? You say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Veh. Blessed be the name of Hashem, his glorious kingdom is forever. That's what a person says if I said a blessing by mistake. So the Ashkenazim, even though they feel you need to, that's how the Aruch HaShulchan explains, you need to say the bracha on the tefillin of the head as well. But because there are other opinions that you don't need to say the bracha, so therefore we show respect by saying Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Veh after we said the bracha. But that bracha, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says, don't say that bracha out loud. Don't say that bracha out loud because of the opinions that say that you don't need to say the bracha. I presume that's why he says don't say it out loud. The Chafetz Chaim, what I recall, does not say you don't need to say that you should say it quietly. So according to Chafetz Chaim, it would sound like there's no problem saying that bracha out loud as well. So that's the issue regarding that blessing. This discussion whether it should be out loud, and that's for the Ashkenazim. But that bracha that you say on your hand, you can say it out loud like any other bracha. Any bracha, you're covering the blood of the bird that you just slaughtered, Ralph. You can say that blessing out loud. You put on your talit, you can say that blessing out loud. So when you're putting on your tefillin, you can say, you don't need to say it. When you put it tefillin of the hand, you can say it out loud. All right, how does that sound to everybody?
What about the one for the finger, rishtich?
Yeah, that you can also out loud to yourself, right? That's however you want to do that. But always the general rule is that anything you say, you should hear. Anytime you pray, anytime you bless, whatever you're doing, right? You should go ahead and at least you should hear what you are saying. For people who pray and don't hear what they're saying, that's not the way it's supposed to be done. People are supposed to hear what you're saying. That's really the best way to do it. Okay, back to our Gemara. Everything's connected here. We're learning about so Nachmanides. So we saw this approach. So he. So he has a different, like we said, different opinion than Maimonides. The bottom line is Maimonides' opinion is, the Rambam's opinion is, every time you have a rabbinic enactment and you do not follow it, you are violating a Torah law. But let's think positive. Every time you're following a rabbinic law, every time you're saying a bracha before you eat, before you drink, when you say the bracha on Natilat Yadayim, every time you're doing a rabbinic mitzvah, you're getting credit for Torah, for a biblical mitzvah. Okay, we're now on 23a. 23a3, top of the page. Motiv Rav Avia. Rav Avia asked Rav Amram. Rav Amram asked the following question. Hadmai. Now, what is Dmai? Dmai is food that you don't know if they took off the maaser. That means there was in the Jewish community, there's a certain amount of uneducated Jews. We'll call them Amei Haaretz. And those uneducated Jews, most of them gave Ralph Levi maaser. They all took off truma. Truma technically is any amount you could take off to give to the Kohen. The average guy took off 2%. 2% is not a big deal. It's not such a large amount to give to the Levi. But when it comes after you take off the Truma and you give 2% to the Kohen, sorry, it's not a large to give it to the Kohen. After you gave you 2% to the Kohen, then you have to give 10% to the Levi. And there was a minority of Jews that felt that weren't keeping maaser, that were not giving the 10%. Good morning, Nathan. Good to see you. There's a minority of Jews that did not give the 10% to the Levi, to Nathan, as well. And therefore, the rabbis instituted that if you go ahead and you buy produce from these uneducated Jews, you need to separate the tithe. Now, technically, you could eat it. You could keep it for yourself. You don't have to give it to the Levi because majority did give it to the Levium. And therefore, it's a money question. Who does this money belong to? Does it belong to me or belong to the Levi so I could keep it? But in the case it was not separated, then the food will be considered tevel. I can't eat food that might not have been fixed, that might not have been separated the tithes. So I have to separate. If I buy the produce from the Levi, sorry, not from the Levi, from the uneducated Jew, call them the Amei Haaretz, I have to go ahead and separate the tithes. I have to take off 10%, set it aside. Now, if I did not do that, the produce that if I bought from an uneducated Jew and I did not do anything, the rabbi said you should not eat that. You should not eat that food because the possibility that it wasn't fixed, it wasn't separated. And that's called demai, is a breakup of two words. De, da, mai. This mai, what is it? What is this produce? Is it kosher, so to speak? Was it separated or not? So now the Gemara states, if you have this food that it was not separated, that you don't know, you bought from the Amaretz, and you want to use it for an Eruv, right? We know the rabbis instituted, we've had different cases to learn about this, that, in your courtyard, you have your houses, they would have homes, little homes that open up into a courtyard, like a little bungalow colony. Everyone has their bungalow, and the bungalows open up, right, Mr. Haber, into the courtyard. If I want to carry from the houses to the court, we all share a courtyard. So technically, the houses are private property. The courtyard is private property. It belongs to individuals where we all share it, but it's not public property. It belongs to the members of the houses. But the fact that it's used in a group way, and let many people use this, all the members of the houses carry from the house to this private public area for them, right, for the members. So it has some similarity to a public property that people can make mistakes and say the same way I could carry from my personal house, from my bungalow, it's my bungalow, my house, to this courtyard, which is shared by a number of members. I might come to think I could carry from my personal house into real public property. And that would be a biblical violation of one of the 39 malachot of Shabbat of carrying. So what did the rabbis do? The rabbi said, if they collect a certain amount of food, each member of the homes give a certain amount. If they put a member of the Friday home in the courtyard, put the food into one of the homes, so it's as if everyone lives in that house, and therefore it's not all the courtyard, therefore you could carry in the courtyard from the house to the courtyard.
Why do you have to be unclothed? Unclothed.
No, right. That's a separate. We're gonna get to that in a minute.
Ugh.
Now, you can even separate it. Right. Then the Gemara says, I could use that for Arvin Bo. I could use this produce, which really should be separated, but I could still use it for, I can make an eruv. I could use this produce to give towards this eruv, towards to join the properties, to join the houses, to be able to carry from the house to the courtyard. And they would collect bread from each and every house. And they would put it into one of the houses. And it's as if they're all living in that house. And therefore, that even though if you can't use food that was not, that you know for sure that it was not taken off, we call tevel, produce that you did not separate the types, you can't use that produce to make this eruv, to collect bread that was not typed at all to use as an eruv. But however, this bread, which is a question whether it was types, and most of them do take off the types, we go ahead and we allow, there is an allowance to use it, because there is this, the rabbis were lenient by Demai, meaning a poor person. The rabbi said that a poor person is allowed to eat this food, or this food that you don't know whether it's separated or not. A poor person, being that most people take off the types, the poor person is able to eat it. And every person has the ability to become poor. Every person has the ability to give up all their property and be poor. So therefore, that's enough. The fact that every person has the ability, the morning Gary, to become to use this this food. So therefore, that's enough that the rabbi said you could use this food to as an eruv, to collect from each member of the courtyard and to put it to one of the homes. And now you'll be able to carry from the house to the courtyard. By the way, people living in and if you would be in a building, you know, based on this, if you would be in, if you would not be carrying, if you don't carry, let's say there's certain places that they might have an eruv and people don't carry because they hold for the opinions that you can't carry in those places. You can't make an eruv. Right? There are certain places that, like, we'll use Manhattan as an example, right? There is a question, can you carry in Manhattan, right? There's some rabbis will say you could rely on the eruv, you're allowed to make an eruv in Manhattan. There's some rabbis that will say you can't make an eruv, right, Gary? There are people that don't carry in this area. Am I correct? I presume there's some that do and some that don't. Like a lot of, right? Am I correct in that statement? Now, in those places, those people who follow Moshe Feinstein's opinion, his opinion is you can't carry in such a place because it's too big of a place to make an eruv. It's too big. It's a public property according to the Torah, according to his understanding. The same way you can't carry outside from your house to the street, you will not be able to carry from your apartment to the hallway, to the hallways of the building, going from one floor to the other. Why? Because the hallways are shared by all the members of the building, and the hallways are like a courtyard, like the courtyard in front of the houses. If I would carry from my, unless I make it a roof, but then there's all the halachot. How to, I have non-Jews in the building. How to make, meaning then you get this. There's no, can you make it? You have issues of making eruv. If somehow the management would lease to you all the hallways, so then you can make, then there's much more. There's more to work with. But if not, so in the old days, if let's say in college campuses, or these type of places, if it's a type of situation that the landlord, if it's a case of a landlord and tenants, and the landlord has something in every apartment, he has a refrigerator in every apartment or a stove, something, so then that makes it all like his. So therefore, they might not need an eruv in that situation. But today, everything is much more co-ops. People who live in co-ops and they own it, there's no item that belongs to the landlord anymore, like the old days. Am I correct in that? If people own everything in their apartment, And so therefore, those people who do not carry out in the street because they don't carry because there's no, they don't feel you could carry because they don't feel you can make an Eruv, you you will not be able to carry from your apartment to the hallways. Because why? Unless you're able to figure out how to make an Eruv. If you would be able to make an Eruv in the buildings called Eruv Chatzerot. Because the hallways is shared by all the members of the building, and it has some resemblance of public. And there's a concern if you don't make an Eruv, then you can't, the people will make a mistake. If I could carry from my personal apartment to the hallway, which is shared by all the members, I might come to carry from my apartment to where? To the public property. I mentioned this thing in our class here a few months ago, and someone said, Rabbi, I never knew that. Meaning there's someone there'd be people, not everyone knows that. Gary, everyone knows that point that we said, that the people who don't carry, and if you do carry, and if you hold it as an Eruv, then there's no problem. You can carry, same way you can carry, I say carry into your building. But if you hold, you can't carry outside. So then if you have a co-op and everybody owns everything, that everybody has total ownership of what's in their apartment, then you would have an issue. You would have to decide. It's like a courtyard. But even though it's not a Torah, it wouldn't be a Torah violation because the courtyard is not public property. So therefore, there's no Torah prohibition to carry from my house to the hallway. It's still private, but it's called semi-private. And therefore that semi-private, there's a rabbinic, the rabbi said, I have to do something to ensure, meaning rabbinic fence kicked in, to ensure that I won't come to carry from my house to the street. So if I make this Eruv, then I unite everything, then it becomes like we all live in that apartment. By putting the food into one apartment, usually what they do is however they do it now, they collect, they use matzah, and and however it's done, but that's only if you're capable of making it. Right, the hallway's enclosed. That's true. The hallway's enclosed, and it could be your courtyard is also enclosed. But the problem is your hallway has a resemblance of something, some similarity to a public area. So even though you're correct, Gary, it's enclosed, there's no Torah violation going on when a person carries from his house to the hallway. But because it resembles something of public, because it's shared by the members, it's not a one-man show, the hallway. We're all jointly using, so the rabbis are concerned that you might come to carry from your house to the public property. That's what we offer has. That's no problem because it's all yours. And also your right. So your porch is now your porch is in. Is it running? Is it going into the public? It's not going to public. Right. So right. So there is right. So there's the question is there are certain things that we have to do to make sure that I won't come to carry from the front yard to the outside. So therefore, if it's a closed, right. So therefore, might have to. There, it's a different thing. I might have to. I have to put some sort of something to show to carry from my personal property. There, the issue was there's a similar concept. Say it again. On the personal property, as long as the issue is if it's not enclosed, if it's not enclosed properly, then I might come to. Right. Then the rabbis create a fence to ensure I won't come to carry into. So that's the idea of why I have to put up this thing to make sure I won't come to. But the apartment buildings, there will be right. Have a great day, everybody.
Baruch.
You too. Thank you all for joining. Have a great day.
Have a good day, Rabbi.
Great day. You too, everybody. Thank you. Mr. Haber? Yeah. Well, yeah. Adam, you don't mind taking his note? Yeah, Adam will take it. Thank you. Okay.